right, plugging forward, getting here a little late because of daylight savings. Hard to get up in the dark, but we're saving lots of electricity. We're helping the environment by getting up in the dark. Which is the purpose of daylight savings and why it was earlier, I guess. Today we're going to apply for a few things. I'll finish up a little bit from last time on chapter 11, talk through the close theorem, which is the nugget of chapter 12, and then start thinking about cap and trade, which is the chapter after. And I'll take a side trip environmental story to talk about tortoises and power plants, tortoises and solar power. And if we have a bunch of times I talk too fast, we'll get to talk about Nobel Prizes at the end. So where we were from last time was doing a graph on abatement, and we just want to think about what this graph is looking like and what's on the axis so we can draw it. So here, this is abatement. On this direction, we are cleaning up pollution, or we are thinking of ways to produce whatever we're producing more efficiently, and we're like reducing the amount of pollution that we emit because we changed something in our production process. So the baseline case, we're over here. We haven't cleaned up any of the emissions. I use the word pollution and emissions interchangeably in class, but that's not too disorienting. So here we have dollars per unit abated. So how much is going to cost to pollute less? How much is going to cost to change the way we do production so that less pollution comes out? And as we talked about last time, we'll have same old familiar crossing lines, and this would be the marginal benefits of abatement, and this would be the marginal cost of abatement. And we think through this. We think the first few units that we need to clean up of pollution are going to be low cost. We're going to find easy ways to do this. We're going to be able to just change basic things without changing our whole technology. And then as we go out and clean up more and more and make our factory emit less and less pollution, it's going to cost more and more. So like the last unit down here that we're abating is a much higher cost, right? So this is a much higher cost up here to clean up out at the margin, out of the much higher level that we cleaned up. So for each of these, this would be some price to abate. The marginal benefits are the benefits, as we looked in the last chapter, less pollution, less congestion, less asthma in the hospitals. So the benefits would start out really high, and as we clean up pollution, had less and less pollution, the benefits would be less. We get down here, we have a lower amount of social benefits that are coming out of cleaning up each unit of pollution. So this graph implies there's some socially efficient point. That's how much our society should target to clean up of pollution. Right? Our society should target to clean up this much because that's where the marginal benefits are going to equal the marginal cost. And at that socially efficient point, it's going to imply some price. And this price will come in when we talk about policy of like, what's the price that we should be putting on the power plant for each unit of emissions that's coming out of the smokestack? What's the price we should put on pollution so that we'll get to the efficient level? So trying to figure out this quantity and this price are sort of like the instruments and levers of policy of cleaning up pollution. A lot of times we're not going to get to the efficient point, but we think about where is the efficient point and are we pushing ourselves from not cleaning up any pollution towards the efficient point? Are we trying to impose costs on polluters to get from zero cost to get up towards the polluters are paying closer and closer to some efficient cost? So that's a very general case in the background. The case that we have specifically in the textbook is about sulfur dioxide. Now, sulfur dioxide is the case example in environmental economics of something that's been done that worked. Okay, a market-based intervention was designed, implemented, and it's basically worked. The amount of sulfur dioxide has been reduced. The big power companies have paid the price to reduce their sulfur dioxide emissions. We've capitalized it as a society, and our total amount of sulfur dioxide that we have is reduced. So when we're thinking in this class, or we're thinking in the future about what to do about carbon in our atmosphere, future of the planet, our big example is to look at the sulfur dioxide trading markets. And this is something I'll talk about throughout future lectures as well. Here they've taken a marginal benefits curve that's flat. We can talk about why they did that, but basically they're saying society's going to benefit equally as the amount of pollution is cleaned up. So this is less sulfur dioxide. This is the current amount that's being emitted here, something like 9-point-something millions of tons of sulfur dioxide, and us cleaning up the sulfur dioxide as we go this way. So the book has a couple examples. So there's so here is if all of the sulfur dioxide needed to be cleaned up. So we're going this way to clean up, and if we require the power plants to clean up 100% of the sulfur dioxide, all 9 million tons. Here's our efficient point where marginal cost and marginal abatement are equal. Here's our dead weight loss triangle, and here's a loss triangle to the power plants. So if we required 100% of the sulfur dioxide to be cleaned up, we would be going past this efficient point. It's efficient for us, according to this, to clean up 8 million tons. This is if we go past that to the 9 million tons. This is the loss triangle that we get. This one is where we're at previously. If we get the full amount of emissions and nothing is cleaned up, here's the efficient point, and here if nothing is cleaned up, here's the inefficient point that we're at. So here's the dead weight loss triangle if no abatement. So we'll look at this point, this efficient point, where we had this price for pollution, that's $3,500 per ton of sulfur dioxide emitted. And where we are off of this efficient point, we can see what our loss is and who's bearing it. This is acid rain in lakes. This is increased respiratory problems. This dead weight loss here is the loss to society if there's no abatement. And when we look at our prices as environmental regulators, we can say what is the right price that the power companies should be paying for each ton of pollution that they emit. And then they'll be following along this curve to figure out how much to clean up. So what this graph is saying, if a price for sulfur dioxide emissions was up here at 6,600, the power companies would pollute this much and they would clean up this much. So this is just an example saying, here's where the price is set wrong. At this point, the power companies would only be polluting this much. If the price was 3,500, they would clean up this much, and they would pollute this much, and we would be at an efficient point. If we're just starting out in the sulfur dioxide trading market, and it's somewhere down here, 2,000 or 1,000, we would get less. If it was 1,000, maybe we would only get 4 million tons a day. So this is so we can think about these price. Yeah. So this is the regulator saying, what's the price going to be to emit 1 ton of sulfur dioxide? Sulfur oxide, I guess, the way right here. So the regulator wants to regulate sulfur dioxide. They're coming up with different pollution fees to charge on this single pollutant, and as they come up with different prices, this is how much it's going to cost the industry to respond. If we go a really high price, we can pass our efficient point. If we go low price, we're not getting enough abatement. Does this make sense? All right, moving forward to Mr. Coase, the Coase theorem. So Ronald Coase won a Nobel Prize in 1991 for some work that was done far, far previously. And when he was doing it, he wasn't doing environmental economics. He was doing law and economics and the idea of transaction costs and negotiations, and sort of when can people find a negotiation that works for them and when the negotiation does not work. But this became one of the fundamental ways to think about things in environmental economics, and a whole body of work has sort of followed Ronald Coase and been called like the Coasean approach. So the question is, there's some activity that has an externality, and whose responsibility is that externality? And a lot of what we'll talk about in this class is externalities and how to get the right price and how to get the right person to pay for that externality. So won the Nobel Prize in 1991. This is the Nobel Prize Committee saying significance of transaction costs and property rights for the institutional structure and functioning of the economy. It doesn't say anything about the environment here, but certainly seminal in the way that we talk about environment and how to control pollution. So this isn't in an environmental publication. This is the Journal of Law in Economics in 1960. So this is basically before there was even a field of environmental economics. And this article, if you go and look at it, it's very sort of old-fashioned way of doing things. It's just talking through a whole bunch of different examples in a very conversational way. The standard example is a factory, the smoke of which has harmful effects on the occupying neighborhood properties. It's sort of written in this nice older style. When we think about this, factories affecting neighborhood properties, that's what we're doing in the class. One of the things that his analysis was AM radio, which I don't know if any of you have even remembered that there was a thing called AM radio. One station could get a super powerful transmitter and turn up to thousands of watts, and they would be drowning out other neighboring stations, right? So the way to think about this is the firm with the most money to be made should be paying the other one to stay off of their turf, to stay off of their part of the bandwidth. And sort of the beginning thought here is, if there's no transaction cost, if it's easy for them to make a deal, they can make a deal. They could say, I'm going to cover coast to coast with my new transmitter. I'm going to get so much market share, I need to move these other smaller people on my part of the dial to another part of the dial and pay them to change. So if there was no transaction cost, they would figure out some way to make a deal from the big station paying off the smaller station. This is also really interesting because we talk about this with wireless spectrum and other things. Radio frequencies are owned by us. It's one of those few things that's still owned by us and licensed to these big companies. So in this, it's interesting. We should start thinking about them being owned by companies themselves. All right, here's the numerical example that Ronald Coase does. Very simple table, like super simple example. Okay, there's somebody planting crops, and there's somebody raising animals. The animals walk in and stumble on top of the crops, right? So the person raising the crops is hurt by the person raising the animals. Here's the size of the hurt: 1 animal, 2 animals, 3 animals, 4 animals. If there's 4 animals, they're losing 10 tons of crop. So this very simple numerical example he's illustrating. Who should pay? Whose responsibility is it? Is it the person who's raising the crops or the person who's raising the cattle? If the cattle are liable, the cattle have to pay the farmer for the crops that have been stumbled. If the cattle have the rights and the freedom to roam, and it's the person raising the crops, the farmer would be liable and would take a loss on their crops. So the farmer would have a decision of whether they should pay this person not to have, to stop their herd at 2, or you could pay for fencing. So here I have an example. The cost of fencing it off is $9. So if the fourth steer is going to create $10 in loss, then it's worth the farmer to pay for the fencing. So in each side of the example, you can look at who's liable, if the cattle's liable or the farmer's liable, and figure out which number of steer should be the right number to raise, and whether a fencing should come in. So here we have crop loss for additional steer, right? So this is a marginal cost right here, this third column. So it's really simple marginal cost, like we do in the work differencing these. The marginal cost of the additional unit of production. There's a whole bunch of other interesting examples from this 1960 law. So the way law review articles work in law, they just take up lots of different examples and look up lots of different cases where somebody sued each other, and they're all sort of like interesting stories. So a pool was in front of one hotel, and another hotel built a tall hotel next to it, which put the shade on the neighbor's hotel, which made the neighbor's hotel not as worthy because less people are going to want to sit out at the pool in the shade. Who's liable? Who has the property rights? You have the right to the sun falling on your property. One interesting thing in this one is solar panels. So Berkeley has changed the rules so that you used to not be able to affect whether your neighbors had trees that shaded your property or not. But now with households putting solar panels on the roof of their houses, you can now ask somebody to cut down the tree because you have the rights to the solar energy that falls on your property. There's this one that's a little bit old-fashioned. We don't heat our houses with coal boilers anymore, but there was one house that was doing just fine. A taller house was built next to it. The chimney didn't work anymore. So now the first house started to fill up with smoke because the chimney wasn't working anymore. So who has the rights to sort of, the fact that the planet is ventilating off the clean air services? The clean air services are getting reduced by the neighbor. Here's a smelly one, like somebody has an industrial production going on, where they're drying cocoa, and it's making an incredibly bad smell in the whole neighborhood. Who has the rights, the neighbor or the person making some economic value? We have this in Berkeley. We have an industrial forge down by the freeway. The whole neighborhood smells really bad on certain days. People are constantly trying to sue to close that down. This one's really good. There was a tavern brewing beer. They were brewing beer in the cellar, and their cellar was vented through a neighbor's well that nobody knew, and then somebody built some cottages around that well, and then the people in those cottages started complaining about these terrible smells. So this is one of those things where there's property rights. that were existing because this tavern had been brewing this beer for a very long time before these cottages are being built. And so the cottages come after, and so you have that question of time, who comes first. This is a big one in the American West. Trains are going through fields. They are burning firewood or coal, and sparks fly out of the old steam trains and set the fields on fire. Who's liable? Is the train liable, or is are the people's crops growing next to the train liable? Does the train company have any liability? Can we get the train companies to put little spark catchers on the top of the train? These examples are sort of grouped into two general categories. There's symmetric and asymmetric interactions between the two parties. If it's a symmetric interaction, if each one is doing some economic activity and has some economic gain, they can reach a deal because they're each seeing some profit and bottom line that they can negotiate over. This is better for the one with AM radio stations, maybe. Asymmetric, or where somebody doesn't have some sort of equal power, equal negotiating power. And these asymmetric cases are where it's more common that we have government intervention and government regulation. The externalities are such that the two parties aren't going to meet something by themselves and will structurally set up a government way to regulate the externality. So here's the Coase theorem. It's got a few different parts to it. If there's an externality, and this is almost the most important part here, and there are no transaction costs, and there's perfect information, then the two parties can arrive at an efficient outcome. They can get a deal that will get to the efficient level of externality. And then this last point is very interesting. It says, regardless of the initial allocation of rights. So these last 2 points are really interesting. The first part of the Coase theorem is that some deal can be made so that the right level of externality comes out. But the second part says, whoever has liability will still get to an efficient point. And this one is particularly difficult in a lot of cases. The farmer can pay for the fence around their crops, or the person raising the cattle can pay for the fence or the herdsman around their crops. The farmers can pay. Hello?
Okay, maybe it's just not as well.
Hello? Hello?
Okay,
Troubleshooter, what can we do?
well, I just got the call, but...
Should I use this one? Hello?
No, I think that one should be fine.
So you know that there's a problem, but... Hello?
I think it's volume up.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Okay, hopefully, do you have a podcast for this?
Webcast, yeah.
Webcast, okay.
Hello?
And, yeah, I'll just increase the volume then. Oh, that's bad.
Should I go for this one? Hello? Can you turn that down? It's in the middle. Here, what if I wear them both? I'll be wired and unwired. This is really goofy. Our wireless technology is failing us, people. We need cables. This is kind of dorky.
I got the...
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, thank you.
Don't trip. Wow, so somebody can come interrupt your lecture and tell you you're not on. I hope it's on. What are we talking about? The Coase theorem. Unfortunately, the Coase theorem seldom ever is so easy to enact in real life. There's almost always transaction costs. Transaction cost is how hard is it to get together and get people to talk. How hard is it to get together and make that sort of transfer. Perfect information between different companies about how it's affecting their production is almost never there. A sort of a prerequisite for having a good negotiation is knowing how much it's affecting the other person. So efficient outcomes are almost very, very difficult to arrive at. And finally, initial allocations really do matter. Who has the right, who has the initial amount of externality that's being imposed totally matter. And all those little case studies of like a tavern brewing beer or a smokestack, who was there first, really affects who has the right. So Coase himself, he was talking about social costs. There's costs that are imposed on each different party, and what's the right amount of social cost for them to internalize. But we use Coase to talk about pollution. Pollution as an externality that has a social cost. We want the right amount of pollution to be emitted. We want a really low-cost way to get there. And we want the lowest cost to society of getting to the efficient amount of pollution as an externality. So one thing we'll talk about going forward is this idea of creating rights so we can have a market-based approach. We're going to create an amount of pollution and trade them. Okay? So really important in Coase was saying that property rights matter. And the amount of sulfur dioxide we throw into the clean air, there's no property rights on that. The clean air is just going to take whatever we throw at it, whatever a treatment plant throws at it. So we say there's not a good property right on clean air. We're going to create a property right that says how much clean air can you use up by throwing a ton of sulfur dioxide into it. We're going to say this property right costs a certain amount. And we're going to give a certain amount of property rights to all the people who are polluting. They're already polluting. They already have a power plant. We're going to give them a certain amount. And they can either use this property right that they own over the clean air, and they can use it to pollute because they're going to create so much value to society by creating electricity and selling it. They're going to create profits and value to everyone else. Or they could take this property right